فكرة أنا بس مجرد سمعت مجربة بس حاليا أنا بس في السجن بدون خبر في أي شيء بدني دكتور ولا بس خليهم طبعا إذا فينا نربطه يطلع معه أي شيء أي بلد كان مكان يحاول معه الهرم
لا مش يعني
Sorry?
So you're not in your way to fix it?
No, I think so.
I thought you were going there.
Huh?
I thought you were going there.
How do you do? Can I ask you one thing? We have clean tissue. جزاك الله خير شيخ. Oh, it's a film, you got a card. You can't hold here, man.
Come on, young man, like you said before. Yeah.
I'm still in front of me because I'm still wearing my coat.
I know, I got them.
You better be... You better be...
Lovely. Is there any chance? Where can I get more from? Because I really like it. And it's running. I know. I googled it and it said Libya, but now I think it's gone now. It must be gone.
I will try to get you one because I keep going.
But you're from Libya? Yeah, I should go there. I wasn't sure if it's safe. It's safe now.
I really will get you one. I think I'm ready to get it.
Yeah, that particular one. You know the perfume?
Yeah.
I never liked them. But that one you gave me one I really liked.
No, because to be honest, I don't like it.
Yeah, it's so strong. Yeah.
We have like a couple of sides. Only this one I use. This one I can get.
Yes. Yours is designer one. Oh yes, it's disrespectful.
20 years.
Yeah.
But it needs 20 years. Because when it's first time.
Yeah. It's so strong.
After a couple of days, you start smelling because you know it moves all that strong thing. You start using it. But then you start keeping it second. But this is why I get the line. But first I can still have some.
That one I like. Yeah, I'm always a cheap. I always see it.
Okay then, I will, if I remember, I will do this.
Jazakallah khair.
No problem, don't worry.
رسالة حاجة كويس عم تطور على جاكيتك والجاكيت هيسمع جاكيت هيسمع في مصاري؟ لا ما معي مصاري عم دور زبين حتى ناخذهم ناشفي محارم غير مصاري بس هذا عبان شو مش هيك اللي واحد جاكيت
In fact, I'm going to wear it.
Brothers and sisters, we are ready to start, inshallah. If I could ask you quickly, brothers and sisters, please to take a seat. We will start, inshallah, with the program with the Quran from our dear brother Abu Khan.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فاذكروني أذكركم واشكروا لي ولا تكفرون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة إن الله مع الصابرين. ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون. ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون. صدق الله العظيم.
In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. So remember me, and I shall remember you, and be grateful unto me, and deny me not. O you who have attained to faith, seek aid in steadfast patience and prayer, for behold, God is with those who are patient in adversity. And say not of those who are slain in God's cause, they are dead. No, they are alive, but you perceive not. And most certainly shall we try you by means of danger and hunger and loss of worldly goods, and of lives and of labour's fruits. But give glad tidings unto those who are patient in adversity, who when calamity befalls them, they say, Verily, unto God do we belong, and unto him we shall return. It is they upon whom their sustainers' blessings and grace are bestowed, and it is they who are on the right path. And Allah has spoken the truth.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you very much on behalf of the Muslim community, as well as the various organisations that are here tonight, for making this event on this kind of blustery, cold Friday evening. The programme is for us to pay our respects, for us to remember Dr. Abbas Khan, who, if I may say, was probably the best amongst us. He gave his life to serve humanity. He gave the most valuable thing that anyone can give, to serve people. And indeed in this event there's a great deal of sadness. But also we feel, as Abu Hurairah was reciting from the Quran, that Dr. Abbas will be elevated by Almighty God, by Allah Azza wa Jalla, to the highest level of paradise. And with that there's some degree of satisfaction, or some of the sorrow may fade away. But his sacrifice has also brought to the forefront the tens to hundreds of thousands of Syrians in prisons without any charge, without any court system, held by the Syrian government. And indeed, with each of these prisoners, there's a human cost. There's a human sacrifice. How many children are weeping for their father or their mother held in a prison? How many brothers or sisters, are crying at the loss of their sibling? And I was fortunate enough, when I came a little bit early today, I'm normally late, but I was fortunate enough to spend a few minutes with Dr. Abbas's respected brothers. And the months, the years of difficulty they went through, they themselves and their mother, trying to secure Dr. Abbas's release, you can't imagine it. They're telling us a story, but you simply can't understand the pain they're going through. It brings a tear to your eye. But this, and the hundreds of thousands of others held in prison, should motivate us, should make us, give us the energy to stand up, to speak out and act on this particular issue. And we need to remember, importantly, that this is not a Syrian issue. It's not even just a Muslim issue. It's an issue for humanity. There's no excuse for any one of us here not to do something about this. That's just a few words I had to get off my chest. We have many more respected speakers who will talk much better than I will. And our programme is a busy one, and I'll warn you now, we have a host of respected and honourable speakers. Without too much further ado, if I may introduce our Lord Mayor, Councillor Naeem Hassan, who's a long active member of the political scene and has been committed to community cohesion.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and good evening. It is with a heavy heart I stand before you this evening to honor the late Dr. Abbas Khan. At just 32 years of age, Dr. Khan was a respected orthopaedic surgeon who had a full life ahead of him. Not just professionally, but personally. His family must have been so proud of him that life has now been taken away. This was a man who was a selfless individual, who gave of himself to go where he felt most useful, and therefore traveled to Syria to offer his medical expertise to help the victims of hospital bombings. There are no words of comfort that can ease the pain of losing a loved one, particularly in such a tragic, mysterious and unexpected circumstances. There is a saying that good comes out of evil, but not in this case. The selfless gesture of a good, decent human being has resulted in a tragedy that has touched the world. Alike so many never had the opportunity to meet this fine young man and can only express what has been broadcast to the world by his caring family when his brother spoke at his funeral. My brother to us was a star. His star shone on our family. He was the kindest and simplest man I have ever met. I offer the Abbas family my deepest sympathy on your loss, and my thoughts and prayers remain with you during this very difficult time. Our government now needs to wake up and needs to ensure that other aid workers go out there to help alleviate suffering of the Syrian. people do not end up in same tragic position. And secondly, the international community needs to double their efforts to end this bloodshed in Syria. Thank you, brothers and sisters.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Our next speaker is Dr. Muhammad Al-Haj Ali, who's travelled all the way from Cardiff. He is the joint spokesman of the Syrian British Medical Society and the British Islamic Medical Association. I had a longer intro for him, but I think he preferred to do that himself. Thank you, sir. Dr. Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, respected brothers and sisters, it's an honor for me to be in this position today to talk about a man, a heroic doctor, who gave his life to sacrifice the lives of others. And in fact, I was very pleased with our host today when he threw out of his chest a few words when he said about the Syrian case, as this is not a national Syrian case actually. This is rather than to be humanitarian case, Muslim case in a broader spectrum. Dr. Abbas Khan is a great story. And when I went through that story actually, through my contact with the family during their crisis, and through what I read, and I met as well from different colleagues who met with Abbas in different stages of his life, Abbas would summarize a story of a noble man. Abbas started his life in London with a family, with a big horizons and with optimism about the future he's going to have. In a well-educated family, got his training in London, looking forward to be orthopaedic surgeon, established a nice family, having a son and daughter, Abdullah and Ruqayya, all nice components of brilliant future. But Abbas decided, and this is the fate of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to have a different path in his life, which is responding to the humanitarian call coming from somewhere. And that somewhere actually is a disastrous country, which is Syria, the country of the moment. When Abbas decided to go to that place, to go to Syria, he started to work on some aid with some friends, paid lots of money from his own pocket to deliver aid, and clubbing with other brothers and friends as well. He took that aid and went to Syria with a big smile. And probably some of you seeing the YouTube video there about Abbas while preparing his luggage and preparing his stuff and the humanitarian aid before going to Syria. Big smile actually, and all of us expecting doctors, when they go to a humanitarian region, to a humanitarian cause, to be in that preparation. I'll get collection of aid, I'll go there, I'll help the needy people, and they'll come back again, and I'll recollect again. This is the normal cycle actually when you do humanitarian mission. But the fate had done something different for Abbas and changed his life. When he went there, he started his journey first into Turkey, in the Syrian-Turkish borders. And the call came from inside Syria that there are some hospitals in needy and he should go inside Syria. And orthopaedic surgeons, in addition to other surgeons like vasculars and ITU consultants as well, very required these days in Syria, as the health system completely collapsed there. And he went there and he took the risk. And sometimes we have to take a step and we have to think about risk, or sometimes we just have to ignore that risk and go ahead. And that's what Abbas did. He went first to a town in Idlib suburb called Sarakin, and there he stayed with a family. And the family said very nice words about Abbas as a gentleman who stayed with them, shared with them the food, the difficult circumstances, the hardship of the people there. So he did not deliver the aid and go back again to the UK. Stayed there and shared with them the difficulty. And then later on, he took a further step for a further risk, going to Aleppo, which is situated in the northern part of Syria. And Aleppo is the city of the moment as well now in Syria, receiving explosive barrels of TNT and huge amount of injuries there, and hospitals being very busy and collapsed in some regions of Aleppo and Aleppo Sabah. So he had to go there, and he took humanitarian aid as well, looking forward to help people most in needy there. He went there and he started his work, and just a few days when he was captured in one of the checkpoints and he was taken to a detention center. And this is now the start of the sad story of Abbas, as most of you heard about it, when he was taken to the one of the most worst in reputation detention centers. And I have to say something about that detention center, which is called Palestine Branch. If the walls of that place able to talk, they will talk about the most sad stories about that place, about how humanitarian and human being values destroyed and crushed, about how some kids and children born there in the prison, in the detention center, which is very sad. In that place, when one of the children was born there and another activist in human rights met with him, he started to tell him a story, and that child born in the prison, and he was at the age of 5. And he started to talk about like the spring, the sun, and that child had no idea at all about what's happening in this life. So this is just to give you an impression about the place where Abbas been. He was detained there for some time, and he lost his weight, and around like he became about like 5 or 6 stones, and in a very difficult circumstances for someone working as orthopaedic trainees in London, in a very well organized life with no hardship at all, to be in that place, in that difficult place. And he tolerated that one. And after moving from detention center to another one, he stayed in that one for a long time, almost 8 months. And in that place, he's seen very difficult things. And he tolerated all that one in a very big heart and in a very big level of patience. I have to share something with the family today and with all of you, which I got from activists in human rights actually, who shared the cell with Abbas. And probably this is the first time to be announced about this thing to share. That Abbas was a great man. That what other prisoners told about Abbas. A great man who tolerated the difficult circumstances, who taught them English, who learned from them Arabic, who was looking forward to help people there, who was looking forward to have a better future for Syria, where the detention center is. This is not a story of a man who was very pessimist, who was thinking to terminate his life. Those people being in the prison said about how noble was that man, Abbas Khan. How was he looking to meet with his family, with Abdullah and Ruqayya, both of them waiting for him. And the fate prepared something different for Abbas, termination of his life. I'm not going to comment now on the way or the method, how the life of Abbas Khan being terminated. But I'm going to say something, and I'm going to take this one from our holy book, our Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our Lord, says in Surah Al-Ma'idah verse 32, من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا ومن أحياها فكأنما أحيا الناس جميعا. Whoever kills a soul unless for a soul or corruption done in the earth, done in the land. It is as if he had slain the mankind entirely. So this is the Sharia of Islam. Only one single soul, as if the whole mankind. And whoever saves a life, it is as if he had saved the mankind entirely. And that's what Abbas did, working on saving lives. We human beings, unable at all to save or terminate life. All that done by the faith of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by His faith. But we can be close for saving lives or terminating this one. And Abbas being in a position to save lives in Syria, where people, elderly people, women, children, all they're struggling with the basics of life, with their medications, with their food, with everything. And Abbas went there, responding to that humanitarian call. Abbas, my beloved brother in Islam, respected sisters, ladies and gentlemen, is a story of a noble man. And I wish one day to go to his grave in the graveyard of Bab al-Salam in London, to tell him that the detention centre where you spend some of your life became a hospital. And that detention centre will be called Hospital of Abbas Khan. And we hope for that one. And that will happen definitely. I mean, there is no doubt about it. We hope one day to go to his grave and tell him, Abbas, that what you wanted. And we see your detention centre now becoming a hospital. This is the future of our Syria. When we see our detention centres, where souls being terminated, where dreams being terminated, where lives being tortured, when we see these places, hospitals, to cure people, to save lives, when we see them, education centres, when we see some junior orthopaedic trainees learning in that place, when we see that dark place called detention centre, Palestine branch, becoming a hospital. I hope to see that day, and I hope to go and tell Abbas, just next to his grave, what we got. And I'm sure that will happen. And I'm sure this is a reality, and that will happen definitely, no doubt about it. What I would say about Abbas, the Muslim man, that Abbas one day said to people there about helping people. And I will recall narrative from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is authenticated on the authority of Nu'man ibn Bashir. مثل المسلمين في توادهم وتراحمهم وتعاطفهم مثل الجسد إذا اشتكى منه عضو تداعى له سائر الجسد بالسهر والحمى. The examples of Muslims to other Muslims, believers to other believers, is like one body. If one organ in that body is diseased, the whole body will react to that disease in a fever. And this is what human bodies react actually for any damage in any organ. And Abbas recalled, and Abbas was the one who feeling with the pain, with the suffering of other organs in this body. I would finalize this speech, short speech, again with our wishes for Abdullah al-Ruqayya to have the best future, to live on the heritage of a man, of a heroic man who gave his life to sacrifice and to save the lives of others. I would love to say, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wash the soul of Abbas Khan with His mercy, with His forgiveness, and reward him his high paradise, his high Jannah, and ease the suffering of Syrian people, and bring the peace to that place, and see one day a hospital called Abbas Khan instead of these detention centres. And Jazakumullah kulla khair. Thank you.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you, Dr. Muhammad. I think the words, again, to illustrate that Dr. Abbas, he made this ultimate sacrifice. I mean, how many of us would leave our warm environments and our daily lives here, all that for the battlefields of Syria to help humanity. Our next speaker is our dear brother Abbas Khan. I think requires no introduction. He's an active member of the Muslim community, both in schools and mosques, as well as a leading figure within the Syrian community. Abbas Khan.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Respected ulama and scholars, respected members of Dr. Abbas Khan's family, honourable members of the House of Commons, the Lord Mayor of Manchester, the Police Commissioner of Greater Manchester, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be with you. May I warmly welcome you all on behalf of the Syrian community in Manchester. Today, we are assembled to pay tributes to one of the best of humanity. We are assembled to pay our respect to one of our best time and age, namely Dr. Abbas Khan. Today, we join together here amongst friends and family to convey our sincere condolences to Abbas's family, especially to his mother, the brave, the dignified, the courageous Lady Mrs. Khan. And today, we ask questions, important questions, difficult questions, hard questions, to those in positions of power, of authority, of influence, to those abroad and to those at home, concerning Abbas, his detention, his treatment, and his death. My friends, we pay tribute to Dr. Abbas, who saw the human cost of Assad's regime, oppression and tyranny. Abbas saw the hundreds of thousands of Syrian people who have been killed. Abbas reflected on the 500,000 Syrians who have been injured. Abbas witnessed the millions of Syrians displaced and left without home or refuge. And Abbas made a choice whether to continue watching and listening to the suffering, or whether to use his skills and knowledge as a doctor to relieve the suffering. We pay tribute to Abbas, who saw the crimes of Assad regime against humanity. Indeed, Abbas noted the awful weapons of starvation applied by Assad regime on hundreds of thousands of innocent Syrians. Abbas noted the brutal weapons of Assad regime, daily airstrikes on helpless Syrian cities and towns, causing damage on life, on nature, on property. Abbas became fully aware of Assad's regime cruel weapons of fear, terror, torture and humiliation. And Abbas decided not to take the easy road, but to travel the difficult road. Abbas decided not to turn his back and carry on looking after his own means, but Abbas decided to go to the very place in the greatest of need for his medical expertise. Abbas decided to stretch his kind hands to treat people. Abbas decided to aid the voiceless and the defenseless. Abbas made the right decision. Abbas made the right decision to help the innocent children, women and families of Syria. We pay tribute to the hero Abbas Khan because he is an example of what represents the best of humanity. As the best of humanity, my dear brothers and sisters, the best of men, the best of women are not those who wait for change when calamity falls, are not those who turn their back when people are in the greatest of need, are not those who crave personal glory, but the best of men and women are instead those like Abbas who commit themselves to restore human dignity. Indeed, my dear brothers and sisters, the best of humanity, the best of men and women are those like Abbas who do what they must, who do what is right, and who do what is needed. Abbas had a vision. Abbas understood the noble term, amana. Abbas comprehended the obstacles. He comprehended the challenges and the pressures. But he decided to give hope to those in despair, to give aid to those who suffer, and to give dignity to those in pain. My friends, we collectively tonight pay tribute to Abbas. For in truth, Abbas, in our age and living memory, embodies the best of humanity. Abbas, a doctor. Abbas, a humanitarian. Abbas, a committed practicing Muslim. Abbas, an aid worker. Abbas, a selfless man trying to do good in this world. Abbas, the hero. Abbas showed us the path of why and how we should help the people of Syria. Abbas ultimately gave his life to a cause beyond him, and that is why we remember Abbas. And that is why we will never ever forget Abbas. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless his soul. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, permit me to ask questions to you all, knowing that these questions need to be answered by the few, convinced that such questions will only be answered if we all demand the answers from the few. Let the record show. Let the record show that the indisputable facts, the confirmed facts, the painful facts are the following. Fact number one, Abbas was detained by Assad regime in November 2012 while carrying out his honorable humanitarian work of treating the innocent, the injured Syrian civilians in field hospitals. Fact number two, Abbas spent over a year in prison. Such prisons of Assad regime are known by human rights groups as the most inhumane jail conditions that are known in recent history. Fact number three, Abbas never saw the light of day from the prison, which kept him away from his aid work, from his family, and from his freedom. It is with these established, confirmed, indisputable facts in mind that I wish to ask the following questions. Why was Abbas detained by Assad regime and prevented from helping people in need? Why was Abbas left for over a year without a proper consular representation? Why was no committed pressure or strong representation placed on the Syrian regime to secure Abbas's release? Why? Why did Abbas's mother receive little or no help or assistance in her ordeal for months trying to locate her son and secure his release? And why? And why? And for the third time, and the 10th time, and the 99th time, why is it that when it was reported that Abbas was to be released, he was found dead in his prison? It is with respect and the greatest of respect that these questions are important, not just for the family of Abbas, who rightly seek justice, but also for us, the people, so that we may never make the same mistakes again. We, the people, must never allow Assad regime to carry out acts of evil without consequence of punishment. We, the people, must never permit those in positions of influence to sit by and remain indifferent. It is with deep sadness that we all mourn the loss of Abbas, made ever more deeper as many of us are now left to ponder a very difficult question. A very difficult question that has been repeatedly asked of me. Would Abbas' fate be any different if he was a citizen of a different color or a different creed? I end by asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless Abbas' soul, one of the best of humanity in our age. I end by asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless the souls of the hundreds of thousands of honorable Syrians who have paid their life. And in doing that, they said in one voice, and we join them. And I ask you to join me and say to the tyrant regime, led by tyrant Assad, Assad, you must go. Assad, you must go. Assad, you must go. We Syrians need our freedom.
Thank you, Brother Salim. I think it's just worth reflecting just for a moment or so. It's worth reflecting just for a moment or so on this very profound message. Obviously, we've lost our dear brother. But the question is what are we prepared to do next? And this will be covered, inshallah, in the forthcoming programme. But it's a question that needs to be asked, and a question that we personally need to have an answer for. We now will go to our dignitaries. If I may introduce, first of all, our dear Tony Lloyd, who's the Police and Crime Commissioner for Greater Manchester, and has always earned much respect for his impartial standing on many difficult matters. Mr. Lloyd.
Let me join with the words that have already been said, that a young man who gives his life for others is a hero. A hero not simply of the Syrians, but a hero of our world. I must say to Dr. Abbas's family that he is my brother just as is your brother, and I join in your loss, not in the way that you can, obviously, but I share your loss because the world has lost a son, the world has lost a brother. Every one of us is lessened by this. A doctor is trained to heal the sick and to be killed doesn't simply kill one man, it kills those whose lives he would have saved, it hurts those whose lives he would have made better by his medical skills, and we should reflect on that. This act of barbaric cruelty is something that we should reflect on. Words very often are very empty when we're saying to a family who's lost a loved one. Words can be very empty, but these words actually should echo round this world, should say to the Assad regime in Damascus, it is time to go. the cruelty that you've inflicted can be represented by one man, Dr. Abbas. It can be represented by the many hundreds of thousands who now suffered in this brutal situation that we know has been taking place in Syria over the recent months. I would simply say this, and I'll finish by this because there are many other speakers. The thing that I do hope for is when the day comes, inshallah, when Syria is a place of peace, the name of Dr. Abbas will be one that is held high, that is held in the greatest esteem. But there is one other heroic person in this story. Many people who, I think, let Dr. Abbas and his family down. One other person does deserve our praise, and that's your mother, Dr. Abbas's mother, whose own extraordinary story puts the rest of us to shame. A woman who did the most extraordinary things in search of her son, in search of the person that she loved. How badly betrayed was that mother by a regime in Damascus, and perhaps by a world that ought to have done more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simon Lloyd. Thank you, sir. And we are going to whittle through quickly, just because we've still got to cover in the programme. Our next guest is John Leach, MP, who is the MP for Manchester Withington, as you I'm sure well know. Mr. Leach.
Thank you. It's always a privilege to be invited to come to events here. I just wish in this particular occasion it was under more happy circumstances. And the first thing that I would like to say is really to pass on my condolences to the family and close friends of Dr. Abbas. I never had the privilege to meet him, but I did have the privilege to meet his two brothers earlier this evening, and to hear the tragic story of the events that have unfolded over so many months. What really hit home to me though was when I saw the programme and noticed that Dr. Khan was actually born 10 years after I was, in 1981. But for somebody who'd had a life of service to help others, to be taken from this world so early in the prime of his life is a real tragedy. But I think his family can be very proud of what he did in just those short number of years that he was here, and the sacrifice that he gave just to help others. And I think as a politician, and all politicians, all political parties are there to provide service and support to their constituents. It's nothing in comparison to what Dr. Abbas Khan has done for his community and for the wider community. But this type of individual tragedy really hits home the problem, the seriousness of the situation in Syria, and the reality of the level of suffering of many tens of thousands of people in Syria. But when you hear about somebody who is one of our own, a UK citizen, who has tragically lost his life in this conflict, it really does bring it home to you, and makes you realise that we have to do an awful lot more to bring this tragedy to a conclusion. But actually, this story that we've heard, and that I heard before the meeting, is also a story of courage and determination of Abbas's mother. And the fact that she went to Syria, wasn't able to speak the language, but through just sheer determination and courage, she did so much to find him and then to try and secure his release. Unfortunately, it ended in tragedy, but I think we must recognise that courage and determination of Abbas's mum, and what she did to try and save her son. I think something that I'm sure all mothers would do. But that story of courage and determination also shows up, I'm afraid to say, the lack of what action has been taken by the authorities to try and secure Abbas's release. And I think there are some serious questions for the authorities to answer, and quite rightly the community wants those answers. And if I can do anything to ensure that we get some answers as to why nothing happened, why is it that other EU countries have managed to get their citizens out of Syria safely, yet we've not been successful? Those sort of questions need to be answered. And I, as a Member of Parliament, am very happy to do my part in trying to get those answers. So thank you for arranging this meeting this evening, and I hope that from this tragedy we can get some answers and ensure that this sort of thing doesn't happen again.
Mr. John Leach, thank you very much for those kind words. Our next guest is Sir Gerald Kaufman, MP, who is the MP for Gorton. I'm sure you've all met and heard Sir Gerald Kaufman speak before. He's been the MP for 30 years in Gorton, which must be quite a feat in itself. 30. I looked it up before, so Sir Gerald Kaufman.
Good evening. I'm very sorry to be late, but I have been holding a constituency advice bureau in Gorton, and it's only just finished, and I came along as soon as it was over. A few weeks ago, I was asked to lead a delegation to Damascus to plead with President Assad to save Dr. Abbas Khan, to release him and to allow him to come home. The organisation, unfortunately, did not work, so that I was unable to go. But I've obviously, with all of you and many other people, been following this sad but at the same time inspiring situation. Sad because, of course, of the way in which he was treated, but inspiring because of the way in which he was ready to risk and indeed in the end give his life to help his fellow human beings. When we had the debate in the House of Commons a little while ago on Syria, I felt it necessary to point out that the shock and horror that are expressed by the way in which the Assad regime treats the people of Syria are bogus, because it is many years since Assad and his father came to power, and they have behaved monstrously throughout the period in which the successive Assad regimes have been in power. All of us will remember the terrible massacre in Hama. Nobody knows how many people, maybe 10,000, maybe more. And a country that can do that to its own people is not going to stop at murdering a doctor. And the bogus story that has been put forward about him committing suicide. Why should he commit suicide? What possible reason was there? He had everything to live for, both in terms of his family, but even more in terms of what he wanted to give to his fellow human beings. We, in this country, do not have a proud record with regard to Syria. We do not have a proud record. We have tolerated the situation for far too long, and it is difficult to know now exactly how we could rectify the situation. But in meeting here this evening to honour one courageous, fine individual, and that is a very important thing for us to do. Let us remember everybody else. Let us remember everybody else who has contributed and is still contributing. I've got a constituent who lives in Gorton who went to Syria and spent months there trying to help refugees. He got back only recently. This is a situation which would stir the conscience of the world, and it is very important and very right that we are gathered here tonight. But everybody knows we are honouring Dr. Abbas Khan, but this is not the end of the story, and the story will not end until democracy at long last, and how belatedly, arrives in Syria. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Joe Kaufman. Thank you, sir. We have, of course, our dear brother, Councillor Abbas Khan, who have been invited to the stage. Councillor Abbas Khan, I think, requires no introduction. I think I have his intro imprinted on my memory. Councillor Abbas Khan, please.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum and good evening. I know you've heard many speakers. I wasn't sure whether I'll be able to make it here tonight, but I'm so happy that I am here because I wanted to come. And the reason I wanted to come was really to pay my respect for the incredible sacrifice we have seen. You know, we are told, Kullu nafsan zaiqatul maut. So death itself is not an issue actually. The issue also, we know that each living person will face death. Issue really is how this has happened. We are told that as a creation, we are the best of the creation. And we are also told we can be the worst of the creation. For me, we have seen in these circumstances, on the one side, Dr. Abbas as the best of the creation. How as a human, you can be better than angels. How you can sacrifice yourself. You can leave your comfort and you can go and alleviate the suffering of other fellow human beings. He went across the world in the Syria for those brothers and sisters who were suffering to alleviate that. And on the other hand, you have the regime who were decades after decades after decades have been making the Syrian people suffer. That is what is at stake, and what we've seen is an incredible person who has given his life like this, and the family. You've seen Brother Salim Aswani asking those questions. It's incredible how one mother has been able to do more than what this British government has been able to do. It's incredible. We say that the British Foreign Office is supposed to be one of the best in the world, and yet we've seen they've not done much. That mother has been able to do much more. So it's absolutely right. I'm standing here as a British citizen. I want to know how this has happened. And I want to know also, because this is not the end of the issue. The issue is the suffering is carrying on. There are other charitable workers who are going there and who are working. We need to make sure that they don't end up like this. We also need to know that what is happening to tens of thousands of Syrians who are there in the prison. If they can do this to a British citizen, what is happening to them? And we want our government perhaps to be looking at how this can be looked independently so the lessons can be learned so that other people don't face what has happened. This issue, we know it's not over. I've said that the suffering of the Syrian peoples have been for decades. The father was doing it, son is doing it. We certainly don't want to be around so his son can carry on doing it. We want an end to this regime. We want the Syrian people to have the right to have their own government. That is what our government should be pushing for. We should be putting this government on record that they will face crime against humanity. All the people who hold the offices in the Syrian government, they all should know they will never be free. We will hunt them back and we will hold them to account for the suffering that they've done to the Syrian people. I'm a candidate for the European Parliament. I promise you one thing. If I'm elected to the European Parliament, I will make sure the European Parliament stands up for this, that we have to stop this suffering in Syria. So brother, we salute your brother. Amazing. Inshallah, his memory will live forever. And let us also carry on giving that sacrifice to Syrian people. We will be with you till you have your freedom. Thank you very much.
Councillor Abbas Khan, thank you very much, sir. Thank you. We are privileged now to have a short speech from one of Dr. Abbas's brothers. We have Shahnawaz here, we have Dr. Afroz, who've travelled all the way up from London to be with us tonight. There's one thing I wanted to mention. I mean, I'm sure like many of you, we've been following this issue in the newspaper and the media, but these things only really hit home, you know, when you're able to spend some time with the individual who knew Dr. Abbas, their brothers, when they can tell us the frantic months, years they went through with their mother running from prison to prison to try to secure the release of their brother, and how also they were abandoned, if we're quite frankly, by the British government, which obviously questions will need to be answered for. So I would really ask you, brothers and sisters, to pay special attention to the next 5 or 10 minutes, because this message, this human sacrifice that you'll hear next, is what really will hit home for us. Dr. Shahnawaz, please.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening to everyone. To thank you for coming and for everyone who said their kind words tonight regarding my brother. The first thing that everyone always asks with regards to my brother is, why did he do it? Why did he out of the blue go to Syria? And they find it difficult to fathom, because we have no relation to Syria whatsoever. And I point to our parents, who taught us that the biggest joy in life is to ease the pain of others. And it wasn't the crisis in Syria that sparked any desire in him to go and help others. Our whole life, our parents raised us, and my brother and I are both doctors as well, to try and ease the pain and suffering of others. And I would say Abbas's life in particular was lined up to go and do the acts that he did, the humanitarian acts to go and help individuals in suffering. And it's something that brought him great joy. And I think that was hit home to me the other day when I was surfing the internet. I found a YouTube video made by the prisoners that he was staying with in Adra, which was the final prison he was at. And the prisoners had taken in Syria their life into their own hands to an extent. I'm making a tribute video towards him to really reiterate to the world that even when the regime over there tried its best to blow his flame out, and in prison over there he was treating individuals, he was teaching them English, and he would tell my mum when she used to visit him to bring blankets and medicines, because she asked him, well, what's going to make you feel better over here? And he goes, if I can ease the pain of some of the prisoners and the suffering that they've gone through, then it brings me some joy. And I think in trying to blow his flame out, they've actually made him the flag bearer for those who are destitute and downtrodden, currently in Syria, but in others around the world. We have serious questions to ask as well about ourselves, about firstly the regime in Syria, but also our own government, the authorities that are supposed to protect us. And I said this before, that my brother was killed for being British, because he wasn't British enough in Britain. We were born here, and I'm British as any other individual in this society. I've lived my whole life here. My brother and I, and Abbas, lived in the service of this country, the National Health Service. Yet when we turned and asked for assistance, we were met with blank faces. And we kept on asking ourselves the question, why? And ultimately, when I saw my brother's dead body come home, I said we weren't British enough. How we change that are through meetings and gatherings such as this. To be a part of this society, to hold everyone to account. What I would say is that this is not the end of Abbas' story. Until the rule of law in Syria prevails, until common decency prevails, both here at home and throughout the whole of the Middle East and around the world as a greater stage, then Abbas' story will continue to reverberate. But we will do our utmost, and I say this as his younger brother, that there is not another Dr. Abbas Khan, that there is not another family that has to go through 13 months without any help or assistance. There's not another son who needs to listen to his mother on the phone with bombs going on the back and then on his way to work, which is what we have to do as a family. That's the only way we can bring him home, because no one else is willing to help. And I would like to request everybody here that it's our job, it's our responsibility to make sure when another individual, irrespective of creed or colour or nation, is in suffering, the greatest joy that we will elicit is by helping those. And that's what Abbas lived and ultimately died for. Thank you very much.
Brothers and sisters, I guess if that doesn't bring a tear to your eye, I don't know what will. And brothers and sisters, that's really why we're here today, to make sure this doesn't happen again. And also to take Dr. Abbas as a role model, as a person that we should also aspire to be, selfless, sacrificed, for the common cause of humanity. Our next speaker, inshallah, is Dr. Shamila Islam Zulfikar, who I'd like to invite to the stage, if I may. Dr. Shamila is a doctor at Tameside Hospital, but uses her time off to visit countries in need of humanitarian aid. Sister Shamila and her husband and her 4 teenage children have recently been to Syria, I think on the return just a few weeks ago, and they've been helping the needy and injured there. And she'll tell us really why people still insist to go and help, and despite what's happened, they'll still be there to help those in Syria. Sister Shamila?
Dear brothers, sisters, esteemed guests, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May God's peace and blessings be on you all. I'm humbled and truly honoured to have been asked to speak tonight at this event, to commemorate the work and ultimate sacrifice that my brother in Islam, Dr. Abbas Khan, made towards humanity. As one of only a handful of people in this room to have made almost the exact same journey that Abbas made up until his capture at the hands of the Syrian regime, I feel that I can truly understand the reasons why he took a calculated risk to help those so much less fortunate than the rest of us when he crossed over that border into Syria. I too made the journey to Aleppo a few short months ago, to the very hospitals where Abbas worked for a short period before his detention by the Syrian regime. For every person being saved in one of those hospitals, several would be dead because of the sheer lack of surgeons or medical supplies. I can assure you that the suffering and desperation of people inside Syria that I had seen in the previous visits was enough to motivate most to actively help and not let these people feel that they're abandoned by the outside world. The international community, which has at large turned a blind eye to the scale of the humanitarian catastrophe that is Syria. On speaking to the medical director of the hospitals where Abbas volunteered for those short 48 hours before he was taken against his will, he told me that Abbas had left a marked impression on those that he had encountered. I quote, "He was humble and genuinely concerned for the welfare of his fellow human beings. He slept on a simple sponge mattress on the floor of the hospital and was very reflective, seemingly deep in thought at what he'd seen around him. Keen to help, he travelled to one of our other hospitals where we were short of orthopods. It was from here that we were extremely saddened to hear about his abduction." I never knew Abbas personally, but from what I had heard from the family, friends and colleagues about this remarkable, brave individual is that he was compassionate and determined to go that extra mile for the person in need. The civilians that he was treating inside Syria were a small part of the millions of people in need. But he didn't let the scale of the problem put him off, or the dangers and risks associated with this humanitarianism in a conflict zone. He didn't let it dissuade him from fulfilling his duty as one who could help in the only way that he knew best, by utilising his skills to save lives. The Syrian regime have been targeting medics, other health workers and humanitarians since the conflict began. Their aim is to break the resolve of the people, of both its citizens and those who come to help them. The timing of Abbas's death could not have been more deliberate. It was just 5 days before hundreds of humanitarians left the UK in convoys headed straight for Syria. 3 of our own ambulances delivered earlier in the year, and 2 of the hospitals that we supported were bombed ahead of our arrival. These are scare tactics that the regime tried to warn international aid workers with, almost as a way of saying, don't bother to come here to help, this is what will become of you. The legacy of aid workers such as Brother Abbas and all the hundreds, if not thousands, who are perished or languishing at the hands of this evil regime cannot be wiped out by the cessation of their physical being. This would be a gross negligence, far worse than that of the international community not doing enough already. The situation inside Syria, for all those who keep up with its ever-dynamically changing predicaments, is dire. Never has there been in recent times a trial and tribulation that has affected so many millions of people in such a short space of time. The sheer scale of the tragedy is incomprehensible. But we must continue with our efforts as best as we can, looking for golden windows of opportunity to get help inside where it is needed the most, when we can. As news of Abbas's death began to spread, a renewed wave of perseverance and determination found its way into our own convoy, from which I've only just returned from a few days ago. This convoy was dedicated to the legacy of the work that Abbas initiated a little over a year ago. We were determined that at least 5 of our ambulances would be allocated to the hospitals where Abbas worked. It sent a clear, hard message to the Syrian regime that we would not stop in our efforts to help the people of Syria, those that Assad had doomed to starve, beat, freeze or bomb to death, no matter what this regime is capable of. We cannot leave these millions of people abandoned. It is our moral obligation to continue to support the destitute by any means necessary. Because, my brothers and sisters, it is not only the Syrians that are being tested. We too will be asked what our role was when all these people were being massacred on a daily basis. It's not practical for everyone to get up and go to Syria for aid work, but we should at least be supporting those that do risk their lives on a daily basis. The doctors and health workers that I worked alongside in Aleppo with, and in some of the other cities that face daily airstrikes, they are the real heroes that work relentlessly to save lives, working 24-hour shifts at times, some having only had 1 day off in a year. Whilst the rest of the world figure out how to find a political solution to this crisis, aid workers like myself and hundreds of others that take calculated risks to help the weak and vulnerable inside can only hope that the voices of truth and reason will prevail. Amongst all this chaos, death and destruction, we can minimize the misery and suffering of those left behind, those not yet killed by this anarchy of greed and power. We must remain committed to this work as long as people continue to suffer and as long as there is a viable solution to alleviate their suffering somewhat. We cannot bring people back from the dead, but we can keep their memories alive by encapsulating the very essence of their actions whilst they were in this worldly life. This is why the work of Dr. Abbas Khan and others who sacrificed their lives in serving humanity must continue even after their souls have departed this temporary abode. May Allah accept all of their sacrifices and grant them Jannatul Firdaus. Ameen. Please remember in your most heartfelt prayers this wonderful human being, his family and all the humanitarian aid workers that risk their lives to reach those that have been abandoned, wherever they may be in the world. The Syrian crisis is an ongoing one. I ask you all to ensure that you are supporting these people in your own ways, the minimal of which is dua, the power of prayer. Then by raising awareness about the situation out there, and lastly, by actively fundraising and supporting those who are practically helping on the ground out there. Together we can achieve much, inshallah. Jazakallahu khairan for listening.
Thank you, Jazakallah khairan, Dr. Shamila. Just before I invite our next speaker up, who is Jenny Dixon, who's the Amnesty International's country coordinator for Syria. One thing I forgot to mention, I apologise, after the video, is that Human Aid, the charity that Dr. Abbas had worked with, is currently working on a project to raise money for the future of Dr. Abbas's children. And essentially these are our children, these are our boys and girls that we need to support. So we can make donations towards this. I think the Just Giving page web address is there. Even so, you can always just kind of go into Google and put down Just Giving for Dr. Abbas Khan, and you can make your donation to support that way, inshallah. But if I may invite Jenny Dixon, please, to the stage. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to give my condolences to the family of Abbas on behalf of myself and of Amnesty International. I want to thank you all for inviting Amnesty to this memorial. We really appreciate it. The organisers have asked me to talk to you specifically about the human rights situation of Syrians detained by the regime. But I want to start by stressing the importance of the work Abbas was doing in Syria. Hospitals in Syria have for some time been seen as dangerous places for people whom the authorities suspect of being opposed to the government. The hospitals themselves have been instructed to report any patients suspected of being part of the opposition. The security forces have regularly entered state hospitals in search of those people who are liable, whom they're liable to be arrested, detained incommunicado, and subject to torture and other ill treatments. There are also far too many cases of those believed to be opposed to the regime being abused not just by the security forces, but also by medical staff, including nurses and doctors. They have been known to physically and verbally abuse them, and in some cases deny treatment. So, not surprisingly, many people avoid the state-run hospitals and turn instead to private or makeshift field hospitals, like where Abbas was working, so they can get treatment without exposing themselves to likely arrest or worse. This is why his work was so important to the people of Syria. Sadly, Abbas was not alone in being detained. Tens of thousands of people are arbitrarily detained by the state. Nor was he alone in being tortured. We know all too well that the torture of detainees is widespread and committed with impunity by the Syrian authorities. Detainees are often crowded into vermin-infested cells. People are almost invariably beaten and otherwise tortured and ill-treated during arrest, transportation to detention centres, upon arrival and afterwards. This is nothing new in Syria. Amnesty has been documenting torture and other ill-treatment in Syria for decades. And recently certain methods which had declined in use have once again become commonplace. Most released detainees said that upon arrival they suffered prolonged and repeated beatings with fists, sticks, rifle butts and electric cables. These beatings are usually accompanied by insults and other verbal abuse. They also usually stripped their underpants and are sometimes left overnight or for 24 hours exposed to the elements. They have told us that food throughout their detention was meagre, consisting of only a small amount of dry bread, rice or potato. I don't want to go into any more graphic details today, as I don't think it's fair for you, for Abbas's family and friends, but we've documented 38 different types of torture in our reports, all of which I personally found horrific and upsetting just to read about. But we're here to remember Abbas, and although I never had the fortune to meet him, I do want to honour his memory, as I'm sure to all of you. There is one very important thing that we can do as a legacy for him. That is to keep the hope for a better Syria in the front of our minds. I'm sure many of you here today know people who in 2011 were campaigning for a better Syria, but who stopped simply due to the depressing situation that we've seen unfold. But I ask you today, don't stop believing and don't stop campaigning. Amnesty has said clearly that we will be there for the long run, actively working in solidarity with those peacefully demanding change, engaging individuals and groups to try and mainstream human rights in their actions, and to stand in defiance of all those seeking to suppress human rights. Whilst the present is brutal and grim, we have to have a vision for the future. And we have to work with the belief that Syria will one day emerge from those long years of repression, that one day Syria will be a country of enlightenment, justice and humanity, that one day the new Syria will be one that respects and protects human rights. This will not happen in months, but years. It's a vision that I believe Abbas was working for, and it's one that we, and I hope you, will not give up on.
Thank you, Ms. Sexton. Thank you very much. We're coming towards the final parts of the programme, and the next speaker, Dr. Haytham, is going to talk really about what we can do next. And I'll ask you, brothers and sisters, this, is that we sometimes come to these events, we hear about the suffering that's ongoing, we hear the talk and the speeches, but the question is what are you and me personally going to do about it? And I'll put a challenge to you, if I may, is that when we leave this room today, don't let this event, these talks today, just be another talk or event we've been to. Let it come out with some form of action, whether that's in campaigning, whether that's in making sure that these difficult questions are being asked of the government, whether that is fundraising. Dr. Abbas, as a role model, was a person, and his brothers and everyone has said, he went out to make a change. He didn't ask for anyone to do it, he went on his own back. Now, if we're truly going to honour him, then we need also to try and make that change. Dr. Haytham will give us, inshallah, some advice on how we can do that. Dr. Haytham, as I may say, is the director of Rethink Rebuild, who have organised the event today. Dr. Haytham, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Osman. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, respected guests, members of Dr. Abbas' family, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and good evening. Our event today is an important event, for we pay respect to Dr. Abbas and his family. For we ask and will continue to ask questions about his detention, treatment and death at the hands of the Syrian regime. My respected friends, the Syrian authorities claim that Dr. Abbas has killed himself. I think all of us don't believe that. But even if for one moment we accepted the Syrian version of the events, this would only raise questions about the real circumstances of Dr. Abbas' detention. How bad were they, that he preferred to take his own life to escape the day-to-day suffering he was experiencing? In fact, was he actually killed to silence him over the torture he had endured? Our event today is a major event as the suffering of Dr.
highlight the enormous suffering of tens of thousands in the prisons of Assad regime. Obviously, Dr. Khan is far from being the only victim of the Syrian regime, or indeed the only person to die in one of the Syrian regime prisons. Amnesty International has gathered the names of over 1,000 other people who have died whilst in the custody of the Syrian security forces. We strongly believe that this is only the tip of the iceberg. In addition to this terrible death toll, tens of thousands of people have been secretly detained and effectively disappeared by the authorities. We don't know how many of them are still alive. Dr. Khan's tragic death symbolizes how isolated the victims of the Syrian conflict feel. Dr. Abbas Khan reported in The Guardian last week about her first visit to Abbas after 8 months. She said he was tortured for 8 months. We think every day, beaten with rubber pipes, blindfolded and burned with cigarettes, kicked and punched, given electric shocks. His weight dropped to 5 stone and he was like a skeleton. It was a dark chamber, underground 6 feet by 8 feet with 8 other men. He said they even arrested children, 12 and 13 year olds, and when they were crying for their money, they were beaten so hard. They were told they would die if they cried again. He told me all of this when I found him. His nails had been pulled off, but he said that was nothing. My respected friends, I myself was a political prisoner in Syria between 2003 and 2005. I remember many stories from that horrific prisons, from those horrific prisons in Syria. I remember that 12-year-old boy who was arrested because the security forces thought he had thrown something on a daughter of an army officer. That boy had been beaten by cables on every part of his body, beaten and beaten for days and days. After 10 months of his detention, he was 12. After 10 months of his detention, that young boy would repeatedly stand up in the middle of the night, run to the wall, start kicking the wall, and shout, scream, until he tired and slept. When I was in prison, I met prisoners who had been in prison for 25 years. They spent the first 20 years in Tadmor prison, one of the most horrible prisons in the Middle East. They told me stories of daily torture. Many times I begged them to stop telling me such stories. Not to mention that they were prevented from doing their Islamic prayers or doing fasting for 20 years. If they were caught praying, they would be beaten until 1 or 2 of their ribs get broken. When the Syrian revolution started in March 2011, the inhumanity of Syrian regime's prisons continued. My father took part in only one demonstration, walking silently. This is my father. He walked like that for half an hour. Because of that, they arrested him 3 times for the sum of 11 months. I thought that they would not torture him because he was 67 at that time. And he just had a heart attack around that time. But I was wrong. When he was released, he told me that they beat him on every part of his body, by their hands, feet, machine guns, cables. They burned him with cigarettes, burned his mustache and nose hair, crushed his toes with their shoes. My brother Muhammad was arrested with my father in his second arrest. They both told me that the most difficult experience someone may face is when your son or your father is tortured cruelly in front of you and you cannot help him. My father told me that they did nothing with him compared to what they did with young people. Just to listen to the screams of detainees under torture, or to see their blood or vomit spread everywhere, is heartbreaking. My father-in-law was arrested twice before the revolution because of his talks against the government. After the revolution, 20 soldiers came to his house and took him on 15th of July 2011. And we don't know anything about him since that time. Just disappeared. I hope he's still alive and alright. My friend Tariq was arrested twice in 2011 and 2012. In the second time, they put him in a small cell, 2 by 2 meters underground, with a small toilet, with another 9 people. There was no light at all, for 2 months. When they took him out of that cell after 2 months, he didn't know himself. His skin was tunnels because of scratching from scabies and lice. He didn't know how much he was scratching himself until he saw his body in the light. Stories and stories without end. In March 2012, Amnesty International published this special report about the torture in Syria's prisons under the title, "I Wanted to Die." They state, this report reveals that all the various security forces are routinely torturing and ill-treating detainees, using methods of cruelty mostly used for decades. The torture carried out appears to be part of a widespread and systematic attack against the civilian population as part of Syrian government policy to crush dissidents. This report listed 31 methods of torture and other ill treatment in Syria's prisons, including beating in all parts of the body, as I explained, flesh gouged by pincers, shabah, whereby the victim is hung by wrists or from a hook or occasionally by the feet, often for long periods in a stressed position where the detainee hardly put his toes on the floor. Cigarettes stubbed out on the body, being subject to sexual violence, being forced to watch the rape of another detainee or a relative, being subject to sight and sounds of torture being inflicted on others, including friends and family members, electric shocks threatening the victim that their relatives will be detained or raped, being stabbed or cut, sharing the cell with a detainee dying or with dead people. Also, Human Rights Watch published a similar report in 2012 under the title "Syria Documented Torture Methods." Respected friends, are we going to deliver an end to the suffering of our brothers and sisters in Syria's prisons? Are we going to prevent another Abbas from being killed again and again? Brothers and sisters, respected guests, when the international community from the UK to Saudi Arabia, from Russia to the USA, insisted on investigating the chemical weapons of the Syrian regime and then resolved to get rid of them, the regime took note and started. When the international community were pressured to help from ordinary people around the world, the international community started to make large financial donations. Therefore, today we are launching a campaign to put pressure on the UK government and other governments to push for a resolution at the UN Security Council, requiring the Syrian regime to open its prisons to international inspectors and to deliver human treatment of its prisoners, including access to medical treatment and consular support. Respected friends, on your chair you found this blue leaflet. We ask you in this leaflet to do two specific things. First, to write to government and local MPs to pressure on the government to push for a UN security resolution requiring the Syrian regime to open its prisons to international inspectors and medical staff. Second step is to sign the e-petition to request the government to use all its influence to introduce urgent humanitarian corridors in Syria and to release thousands of political prisoners. For all details of this important campaign, please visit the website British Syrian Center/prisoners. And please register yourself at the desk at the entrance to receive any updates on this campaign. Respected friends, honored guests, members of Dr. Abbas Committee, it is with the life and death of Dr. Abbas in mind. If we are to be, who are we meant to be? Destined to deliver peace, justice, dignity for all people around the world who face similar, if not the same, challenges. We must always be measured by the likes of Dr. Abbas. May Allah forgive him and all our beloved people. Ameen. Thank you and assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah, Dr. Nathan. We're coming close to the conclusion of the program. Jazakallah, you've been very patient. But the final talk is what we've just heard now is about where we need to go. And as I said, brothers and sisters, before, I'll put this challenge to you, is what are you and me prepared to do? After hearing all this, what are you prepared to do? I'd urge you to make a promise that we take on board Dr. Haytham's recommendations, we do something more than that even. But I urge you, between you and Allah Azza wa Jal, between you and God, you make that promise today, tonight. Life is busy, I know things will happen, we're all busy. But like Dr. Abbas, we need to make time. And this is where the change will occur, inshallah. As we come close to the end of the program, we have Brother Mazen Charwak, who would like to present a small plaque to our dear brothers Dr. Feroz and Dr. Charnawaz in memory of Dr. Abbas. If I may invite now, please, Sister Saima Albi from the BMHC for allowing us to use and supporting the programme today to say a few words. Jazakallah khair. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Respected guests, and particularly the family of Dr. Abbas. I was privy to a meeting prior, and I must say the details that you mentioned, couldn't fail to move even the least emotional of us, even the entire event. I've been through 2 tissues already. On behalf of the British Muslim Heritage Centre, Brother Nasser, the chair, couldn't be present this evening. I'm the vice chair. We'd like to thank you all for attending. It's been an honour for us to host such an event. We didn't organise the event, but because of the kind support we have from the community in terms of the building, etc., we are able to support such events. Obviously, we've had quite a few somber talks, and on a lighter note, I'd like to spend just 2 minutes of your time. I know that it's been quite a long evening, and I'm sure you all want to go home, but I'd like to tell you in a couple of minutes a little bit about what we do here at the British Muslim Heritage Centre. Mainly, our vision here is community cohesion amongst the Muslim community and the wider community. We hold various training sessions. We have an education wing, we have youth clubs, we have film projects, media projects, marriage projects, but all of this requires funding. On your chairs you will all have a piece of paper which is the Friends of the British Muslim Heritage Scheme. Those of you that are able to, we would kindly appreciate any standing order that you would like to give to us. You can hand the forms to myself. If you don't have any details, that's absolutely fine. You can just put a phone number or an email and we will contact you. We like support. The centre was built with support from the community. It's totally, £3 million came from the local community. It's taken another £3 or £4 million to get it into the state it is in now. It was originally a college for evangelical ministers, and now we can see the great use it's being put to. So on behalf of the British Muslim Heritage Centre and the Board of Trustees, I thank you all for coming, and I would also urge you to take heed of the words of Dr. Hytham, try and support the prisoners, let's try and do something positive for this cause. Please take some time to also look at our website and support our centre. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sister Simon. Jazakallah khair for that. Brothers and sisters, we are now going to end, inshallah, with a closing dua. Not myself, of course. We have Sheikh Salim to lead that. And following the completion of the dua, there's an exhibition outside, as well as some light refreshments. And we urge you to spend a bit of time. I know it's a bit late, or spend some time just to meet each other and get to know also our guests that have travelled a long way to be with us. Sheikh Salim, can I ask you to come to the stage and close the programme? Jazakallah khair. Thank you.
I'm not sure whether I'm the right person for this job. In my eyes, Afroz or Shahnaz would have been certainly much more appropriate to make dua. But Jazakumullah khair, thank you very much from all of us, the Syrian community in Manchester, for attending. Put your hands up and say Ameen, as dua is undoubtedly one of, the most powerful tool. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. الحمد لله رب العالمين. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد الصادق الوعد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم لك الحمد حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه ملء السماوات وملء الأرض وملء ما شئت من شيء بعد. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا إنك جامع الناس ليوم لا ريب فيه إن الله لا يخلف الميعاد. اللهم هذا حالنا لا يخفى عليك وهذا ذلنا ظاهر واضح بين يديك فعاملنا يا مولانا بالإحسان إذ الفضل منك وإليك. يا حي يا قيوم يا حي يا قيوم يا حي يا قيوم. اللهم ارحم شهداءنا وداوي جرحانا وفك أسر أسرانا وفك أسر حرائرنا واكتب لنا نصرا عاجلا غير آجل يا رب العالمين. Ya Allah, Ya Rabb al-Alameen, we ask you to bless the soul of Abbas. Ya Allah, Ya Rabb al-Alameen, We ask you to grant Abbas the highest place in Jannah, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen, you are our witness that Abbas had made that journey for your sake. Ya Allah, reward him accordingly. Ya Allah, protect Abdullah and Ruqayya and give them the best of future, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen, throw Iman and Yaqeen in the heart of the courageous, noble lady Mrs. Khan, Ya Rabbil Alameen, and bless her remaining 6 children and the extended family, and let her, Afroz and Shahbaz and the rest of the family live in happiness and see the children of Abbas servants of Islam, Ya Rabbil Alameen. اللهم إنا نسألك نصرا قريبا وفرجا واسعا يا رب العالمين. اللهم ارحم ضعفنا واجبر كسرنا واختم بالصالحات أعمالنا نلقاك وأنت راض عنا. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.
لا ممكن ندور بالطايف just say anything like a word for the Syrian people. Just like a small word for us Syrian people.
Oh, small.
Yeah,
say
small
something.
words. Yeah, just a message for the Syrian people.
Okay. Sorry. This is a message for all the Syrians who've been caught up in this civil war that's raging. We have, myself, people in the West, are directly affected by this war. My brother Dr. Abbas Khan, came to your country to help you, and he has paid the ultimate price by being killed by the regime that is now brutalizing you. I would like to say that we are in solidarity with all the Syrians now. I have been affected. I feel for all the Syrians, all those who have lost loved ones, and I wish that your suffering very soon will come to an end, inshallah.
فينا نطلع لبرا فينا نشيل هدول نحطهم برا
جوا لونج
يعني في هناك في محل بالكهرباء كذا بس حط فيه عدة
ايش خلص شحنه؟
لا في شحن بس انا مش عايز بس نصور
لكن فقط للجلوس بس شيء لا
بس هناك كهرباء بس فيش كهرباء بكره شوي سنخلص خلص خلي بكره راح